Vijay gave me the opportunity to share a little bit about UCI's journey in this regard. And it's been a fascinating day for me because how often do I get to sit and listen to a dozen or so people get up and talk about their journeys, over lunch and talk about different things, sat in a talent conversation over lunch. And I came to UC Irvine about 3 years ago. Let's see, where did they, oh, okay. 3 years ago. Had spent 6 years before that working at the office as president, so Jagdeep and I actually were colleagues. There were two CIOs, and I used to introduce myself as the CIO who did not have any money, right? Because he was the guy managing $110 billion when I knew him. And then because, and at that level, and UC will announce that its revenues for the past year are about $46 billion, which would put us at about in the global 125 in terms of from a revenue perspective. But after 6 years of kind of sitting at that level and overseeing an IT unit that was maybe 8,500 people, I really wanted to come down and come to a campus. Because at that level, I didn't get a chance to really see students every day. I didn't get a chance to work with faculty closely. And I really wanted to roll my sleeves up again and get into the meat of things. And so Irvine turned out to be a great place because it had healthcare, and I spent a majority of my career in healthcare, both as a general manager and as a technology executive. And then also a leadership that was really asking the question, how is technology changing the way we think about the mission of the university and the things that we do? And I said, hey, that's fantastic. Can we add data into that equation? Because part of what I've been doing in the last decade is really how do we turn data into an asset as an organization? And great organizations today use data not just to drive internal decision making, but also they turn it into an asset that they generate other value propositions out of, and even in some cases, even new revenue models. And so, the question that I get to ask, and the Chancellor didn't give me a very tough assignment. He just says, great, you got here about the end of 2020. By 2025, everything we do, we'll do differently. And by 2030, we'll be uniquely different as a research university. That doesn't sound very hard, does it? And I'm like, well, it might be a little harder than we think, but okay, let's go with it, right? Because it gives me some pretty clear marching orders in terms of my job, first and foremost, is to challenge everything. And so, coming from a business background, it's like, look, what is the business that we're ultimately in at the end of the day? And it's like, when I first came and started working in the university environment, I said, well, it's actually pretty simple, Tom. We create the future. Our research defines the way that domains are seen. We push the boundaries of discovery. We're creating the future, right? This next century will be the future of biology will define the next century because we've hacked biology and we've made it a computational challenge to address. And we're seeing that. We also create the future because we educate a population of people who are going to go work for your companies. And they come in with fresh ideas that get informed by the research of today as well as the learnings of the past. And they come out and they hopefully are the transformational contributors into what your organizations are doing. So it's pretty clear. It's like our job is pretty simple. We get to create the future. Well, okay, so let's break that down into business terms, right? We have an education business. We have a sponsored research business. You heard Jagdeep say that we're a $45 billion enterprise or healthcare organization with 10 campuses built into the middle of it. He's not incorrect in the way he describes that, but we here have about a $2 billion healthcare enterprise and about $4 billion overall, so it's about 50% of our total. And part of the public service mission, that can mean many things, but part of that public service to me is providing the type of candidates that you want to hire into your organizations. So these are the kind of the value propositions and the stakeholders that we have to think about. And I grew up as, working around the technology industry, right? So the concept of there's got to be a part of the investment that runs the business. Grow for me is how do we incrementally innovate in the organization? So it's growing, yes, but it's an incremental growth. And then the transform is really what we're talking about with many of you are responsible for, which is how do we really disrupt? One of the things when I was in my executive leadership development programs was the difference between frameworks for incremental innovation versus disruptive innovation, right? Because they're two very, very different frameworks to work with, and how did he get them to coexist? And so those types of things are kind of the way I approach the job, and what I think it means is we want to go in and define what it means to be a 21st century or a post-2020, I like to call it research university. And so what I found really works in our environment, because we have a lot of very intellectually stimulated individuals who work at a university, is you do things by posing questions. Questions are great conversation starters. And also, it gives me a chance to play a role being very naive and really asking some basic assumption questions to help me understand. And so the questions I've been going around over the last few years, which the pandemic only forced the issue more quickly onto the table or into the prototyping or the pilot phase. It's amazing we still talk about that with respect to work reimagined. We're in the pilot phase. And I'm like, dude, I'm way past the pilot phase. We are in the new model. But it's how do we really think about our workforce of the future? How are we going to support them? Certainly from a cyber perspective, the world changed a lot because a lot of our cyber practices were built pre-pandemic around people connected to the network, sitting in one of our managed buildings. Well, that's certainly no longer the case, so our entire cyber posture needed to change, right? How do we really think about automation? Higher education is a consistently constrained financial picture. Money comes in different colors, so you can only use it for certain things. You can use state dollars for certain things. You can use federally funded research dollars for certain things. You can't co-mix the things. So we always have kind of surpluses in one area and deficits in another. So in places where we have deficits, how are we really looking at the basics of technology and automation to change things? How we're teaching, the ability to use more technology in the classroom, to make it a virtual experience, to make it a more personalized experience. I'm a mass personalization person. I think every student wants more optionality in how they consume their educational content and their interactions, and that every student has their own journey that they're on. For some, it's the traditional 4 years experience of showing up here in the fall after their 18th birthday and going for 4 years. For others, they have family obligations and maybe contributions into their family's income, and so they're going to work 25 hours a week and take a little less class load. How do we support them in a much more personalized way? And how does data, now that we're digitizing the entire student experience, what happens in the classroom, we're capturing more and more through the tools that we're using, more and more of what they're doing in their educational experiences, what services that they're using on campus, that's all being captured in data streams that we're aggregating and figuring out how do we create a more personalized experience for our students. How is the nature of research changing? It's real simple. More data, more diverse data, more computing, right? And how do we build competitive advantage? Because sponsored research is a competitive game. And then you heard Jagdeep talk a little bit about the healthcare side, but the nature of healthcare is changing. Where we're delivering care is changing. How patients interact with us, the concept of digital front doors, more personalized medicine, and again, a lot of that is more digital technologies and more data. And so one of the concepts is, the common theme and why I wanted data in the portfolio. So I own the technology functions of the organization. I own the data strategies for the organization. I kind of partner with different parts of the university in terms of what we're doing with things like AI and machine learning. And I do have the risk side of the equation where I get to bring the right set of people together to talk about our cyber challenges. I launched this concept called the collaboratories at UCI, right? Because basically organizational success at AM is a team sport. It's not an individual thing. So many people I heard today talked about the silos in their organization, and we have very, very well calcified silos in the higher education side of the business, but also the healthcare side of the business. And so it came up with this concept of the collaboratories because we were going to aggregate our data to make them competitive differentiators for us. As one of my colleagues in a different industry says, our goal around data is we want to use our data to make better decisions faster, more consistently, and then at scale. And I love that framing because it gives me something to shoot at in terms of how do we bring our data together. So in the healthcare context, it's not just about electronic health records or images and genomics data. It's about how do we mash it all together to deliver on the vision of precision health that we heard a little bit about today. So we have built data platforms that allow us to, in the healthcare setting, we call multimodal data, bring it together, partnered with industry to help us build the capabilities for how do we analyze that. And just as an example, so if I bring together electronic health data, medical images, which is pixel-based, genomic information in waveforms from your EKGs, and I put that all together, how do I build a predictive algorithm around such different, diverse data sources? Well, wonderful thing about being a research university, you have a school of information and computer science where someone over there who's not, if they haven't been working on it, would love to challenge the work on it. And so it becomes this interdisciplinary opportunity for us to pull on the best of the best across our campus. And because we're part of a UC system, sometimes we actually partner with the other campuses. And so data for me is not, in and of itself is not knowledge. You need data plus deep domain expertise that can work interdisciplinary to actually pull out the nuggets of value that you can create. And then the concept of creating an ecosystem allows us to basically create a platform to bring not just our deep domain experts together, but to bring us to work together with industry. In healthcare, that might be working with payer organizations or medical device companies or pharma companies. And some of the things that we did in healthcare during the pandemic where we had to accelerate getting these capabilities into place is, it started with just triage. We had to build predictive algorithms to figure out which of the sick patients really needed to be in a hospital bed and which could we treat with alternative ways and basically send them to recover at home. And so we started mining our data and using machine learning, and we built predictive algorithms. That lended UCI to be ranked as one of the top 3 healthcare organizations in the country for survivability for inpatient stays of COVID patients. It got the attention of the people in Washington, and they said, we'd like you to help us with some problems with what you're doing with your data, your retrospective data. We're rolling out monoclonal antibodies as a treatment, and we have this protocol for who can get it. Can you tell us whether we've got the right protocol? And we came back and we put it through, we recalibrated our models around it, and we said, actually, we think your protocol is too narrow. We think there are actually many more patients that could get this treatment if you opened up your protocol. And here's the result of our model, though. We think that that's the case. And based on that feedback, they actually expanded the protocol and more patients got to utilize monoclonal antibody treatments, which gave them the ability to come to an outpatient center, get an infusion, and then go home and recover in the comfort of their home rather than having to have a hospital stay. So it just showed the power of data, and that has now led to us to have several other opportunities to basically generate value propositions with the healthcare ecosystem. For me, the data, what we're doing in data in healthcare is something that you can take the patient out of the center, put the student in the center, and it's really different context, but same challenge, which is we have all these really diverse data streams of understanding our students who come from very different backgrounds, all have their own journeys and paces. But how do we put that together? And so we have a new initiative we call Data-Driven Student Success, where our goal is to not just do things like close graduation gaps between different students from different backgrounds or help more students graduate in that 4-year time frame, but it's really support each individual student with the personalized goals that they set, both in the classroom and in terms of their social and campus life, and prepare them for what comes afterwards, right? So to me, the student of the future shouldn't just walk out with a degree and a piece of paper, but really with a measured set of competencies built around a matrix that industry collaborates with us and defines for us for the characteristics and the competencies that you want your employees to have. And that our students, we can measure them while they're here through data, and then they can walk out with that extra kind of assessment and evaluation that is part of their portfolio that they sell you on and why they would be a great fit to join your organization, right? That's what we think the new research university looks like. Very much informed by data, taking advantage of not just the data, but the deep subject matter expertise, and using our students also as giving them the practicum of being able to work with this data as well. And so we're opening up all sorts of labs where they can play with these technologies, play with the data, and actually prototype for us in the early stages. So this is some of what we're doing. We have a lot of programs also investing into our workforce, since we talked about talent that I won't go into, but I'm happy to, Vijay, if we have time, happy to answer if people have questions.